Good morning, BookTube, YouTube. This is Johnny. Thought I'd make a video since my wife left to go some grocery shopping with our granddaughter Coralie, and I'm sitting here writing in my diary, waking up to another day. Here is July the 22nd, 2025. It is 9:37 in the morning. It is 73 degrees inside the hermit hut, my cell. And writing in my diary, I'm on page 609 for the year 2025. Drinking coffee. I haven't been reading anything in the mornings lately because I've not been in the mood. Now, my wife, yesterday we read through the epistle of the Ephesians in the Bible. Yeah, we finished Galatians, and then we will start reading the epistle to the Ephesians. And yeah, we read yesterday, for example, chapter 2 of Ephesians. And you he made alive who were dead in trespasses and sins, in which you once walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit of who now works in the sons of disobedience, among whom also we all once conducted ourselves in the lust of our flesh, fulfilling the desires of the flesh and of the mind, and were by nature children of wrath, just as the others. But God, who is rich in mercy because of his great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved, and raised us up together and made us sit together in heavenly places in Christ Jesus. Those are very gospel words in these times when we see Rome burning, the destruction of American democracy. So I thought what I would do in this video is just show you some used books that I recently acquired. Yeah, I don't really go out much anymore, but I did stop at local thrift stores just because I was out yesterday. I had to pick up a prescription, and then I went to Legacy, which is around a couple blocks from us, and just stopped in and looked around. And I did go down to the Book Nook, I think last week or this week. I didn't see anything. I mentioned about going to Staples Office Supply Store and going to Goodwill Northside and didn't see anything. I haven't gone to Salvation Army thrift store Northside in a while. I might do that, but I'm kind of like not in the mood to leave my cell. I'm getting kind of tired hearing all the roar of Babylon, all the mess going on around me. So I thought, so these are just odds and ends that I picked up recently. I have been reading still for nonfiction writers on writing by Henry James. I'm on the sketch of Anthony Trollope. I read the other day on George Sand. And so I've been reading this. Usually I read this in the evening, well, in the afternoons when I'm sitting outside if it's nice out. So I've been reading that. As far as fiction, I start reading Jonathan Lethem, Brooklyn crime novel. Jonathan Lethem is one of my favorite American writers. This is, I think, is one of his most recent ones. This one came out in 2023. And I've still been reading Patrick White's biography, A Writer, by David Marr. Still reading this. So that's what I've basically been reading you know, afternoons and evenings. So these are the used books I found recently. I found this at Southside Goodwill. This is the Autobiography of Bertrand Russell. I have his biography, and I think he wrote a history of philosophy. This edition was published in 1975. I like autobiographies. I like reading about Bertrand Russell was a philosopher, a mathematician. Anyway, this is his autobiography. He was an interesting person. I've read about him in other biographies. So I kind of look interesting in reading this. So I'll pick this up. This is American history. I found this at Goodwill, Southside here in Holland. I have another one of these volumes in my library somewhere. It was a series. And this one's called Victorian America, Transformations in Everyday Life, 1876 to 1915, by Thomas J. Schlereth. I can't pronounce the name. Yeah, I have another one. There's like 4 or 5 in this series. And I have another one somewhere downstairs. When I cataloged this in my library thing, it showed that I had another one in this series. And I can't find it. It's down there somewhere. See if I can try to find a title of it, but I can't find it. So anyway, but I like reading about American history. That's why I picked this up. And then, as you know, I was born in Oakland, California in 1952. Before I left, well, I came to Michigan in around 1978, and I was living in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And even though I lived all over the country growing up, I consider San Francisco, the Bay Area, my hometown. And I lived in San Francisco Bay Area from about 1968 to about 1978. Did I say 1916? 1968 or 68, because in December of 1968, my mother was killed in an auto wreck in Los Angeles. And then I went to live with my aunt in the Bay Area, San Pablo. So I consider, but from about being 16 until I was like 27, 28 years old, I lived in the Bay Area. So I can kind of consider that my state of being. Plus I was born in Oakland, California. So I consider myself a West Coast, San Francisco, that's why I call my hometown. So I found this at Goodwill, Southside. San Francisco Lost Landmarks by James R. Smith. Yeah, I like reading about San Francisco, the beats, hippies, the San Francisco poets, San Francisco music scene in the 60s and 70s. And so I picked this up on San Francisco. Plus I collect books on San Francisco and Paris and London and New York City. I found this at Goodwill, Southside, The Postmodern Turn by Stephen Best and Douglas Kellner. It's basically it's a study or on postmodernism, and postmodernism, social aspects, sociology, philosophy. Yeah, I collect books on postmodernism, and so I picked this up on the philosophy of postmodernism. I have other books by this British historian. His name is Christopher Hibbert, and this is his biography on Wellington, a personal history. I have other books by him. He wrote a biography on Queen Victoria. He wrote a book on, I think, Elizabeth I. He wrote a book on the French Revolution. Nelson, a personal history. Yeah, Virgin Queen Elizabeth I. When I went to catalog this book, I had like at least six books by him. And I can't find them all. I found a couple. Some I might have dehauled, but this is his on Wellington. And I like biographies, so I picked this up. I found this at Legacy thrift store, which is around the corner from where we live. And I didn't know what it was about, but I like looking at it. It was only like $1. And when I went to catalog this book, 2,000 people had it. And it's I suppose, a classic study on Renaissance. It's called The Cheese and the Worms, Cosmos of a 16th-Century Miller by Carlo, Ginzburg, translated by John and Anne Tedeschi. I can't pronounce it. Let me see. Yeah, it just looked odd, and I was surprised that so many people had it. I never heard of it, but it's supposed to be like a study of this Miller who committed heresy, and he was burned at the stake. But it just looked kind of interesting. He was burned at the stake in 1599. He constructed a radical cosmology and dared to present it to the world. I don't know, it just looked odd, so I picked it up for $1. We just recently had the Friends of the Library used book sale, and I picked up paperback Peter Matthiessen, Indian Country, and I found a hardback of it at Legacy bookstore. I collect Peter Matthiessen. This is his book on, it says here on the flap, since the white man first set foot on the American land, he viewed the wilderness as something other, as a hostile or beckoning landscape he could shape to his own ends. But the American Indians viewed it very differently. In Indian country, the land is sacred and man is at one with it. Environmental desecration, alteration in the name of progress, and spiritual transgression are the same thing and will invite the same eventual damnation. In Indian country, Peter Matthiessen explores 10 important instances where the white man's encroachments upon the sacred grounds of Indian tribes show the tragic effects of confrontation that is bound to harm both sides. He takes the reader with him to the lands of the Massachusetts, Hopi, Cherokee, Mohawk, Yurok, the Kuruk, the Pacific Northwest, Lakota, the Charmash, the Paiute, the Shushan, the Ute of the Great Basin, and the Navajo of the Big Mountain. In each case, Irrevocable dam destruction threatens the Indian land and ways. No reader can afford to ignore the absorbing journalistic details of Mr. Mathiessen's urgent accounts of the larger message they advocaatly proclaim. This is Mr. Mathiessen's first book since his widely acclaimed book In the Spirit of Crazy Horse, which also concerned itself with the plight of Native American Indian today. So, I picked this up by Peter Matthiessen. Yeah, I have this in paperback. I picked it up recently. I collect him. So I found this. One of my favorite American writers is John Updike, and I found this at Legacy. This is a literary study. John Updike, The Three Great Secret Things, Sex, Religion, and Art by George Hunt. Yeah, I collect books on John Updike, literary studies, criticism, essays. I have his novels, his essays, art criticism, poetry, Autobiography. He's one of my favorite writers. So. And this is published by Erdmans, which is a Christian publisher. And I noticed it had in here it was at the bookstore. The bookstore, when Carol and I first got married, we lived near the bookstore, Erdmans bookstore, and it was right downtown Grand Rapids, and I used to walk there all the time. And it even has the address here. It has here WMB Erdmans Publishing Company, 2255 Jefferson Avenue, Southeast Grand Rapids, Michigan. Yeah, we just lived right near there when Carol and I first got married there. When Carol and I first were married, we had a little tiny apartment in a big two-story house. It was divided into apartments, and I used to walk to Erdmans. I could walk maybe 20 minutes from where we lived, and I bought a lot of books at the bookstore, Erdmans bookstore. You see, it has the bookstore, and so yeah, Erdmans is a Christian publisher, but they publish all kinds of books. And of course, John Updike dealt with religion and sex and art. And so I picked this up. Yeah, I bought a lot of books at the bookstore when we first got married, Carol and I would go walk down there and look for books. It's a small little place. Eventually, the bookstore moved to another location, and it was a great bookstore at one time. And then I picked up at Legacy also the Cotton Club, which was a jazz club in Harlem back in the 20s and up in the 40s, I think. And Duke Ellington performed there. It's just a Louis Armstrong there in the. So it's a very famous where jazz, Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, and I collect books on American music, folk music, rock and roll, jazz, all kinds of, but it has 125 photographs. This is by Jim Haskins, the Cotton Club. Yeah, it just has all these old photos of the Cotton Club, and there's a picture of Betsy Smith. Let's see, it has all these different old photos. Yeah, I like reading about Harlem there, and you know the Harlem so it's almost like Black history. See these old photos. So it's on the Cotton Club. You can, if you go onto YouTube, you can see old photos of performers who performed at the Cotton Club. I did that the other day, and so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, I didn't know, but the Cotton Club was owned by mobsters. But they did have black performers. So I picked this up at Legacy. You know, I collect books on the history of jazz. I have biographies on Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, just different people. So that's the used books I found last week. Yeah, today, probably last week. I got books coming in the mail this week on a Thursday, just odds and ends. Yeah, I like all kinds of books. I noticed that certain people, they like cowboy books, they like science fiction. A lot of books I see in BookTube I've never heard of, I don't read. I just have a wide interest, but some, I'm a student. I like learning new things, and so I have a wide interest. But I like studying about postmodernism. Like it has a chapter, postmodernism in art, from spectacle to stimulation, paths to most postmodern science, postmodernism in the arts, just all kinds of things. Just look, it was only $1. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever go back to seeing San Francisco, California. Years ago I thought, oh, when I finish college or seminary, we'll go back out to California. I have a sister that lives in Sacramento, California. But I haven't been out to San Francisco or California going on 48 years. But I still read about San Francisco. Yeah, and I'm always a student of American history. And I like reading about Cambridge, Dons in England, and Bertrand Russell. He knew the Bloomsbury people, and I like autobiographies. Eam has a letter, you know, he knew people like Joseph Conrad. There's a letter here. He just knew different people at that time period. Yeah, you have Winstein, Ludwig Winstein. He was friends with him. People involved in the Bloomsbury group, and all kinds of letters. D.H. Lawrence. So I don't know, it looks kind of interesting. I like reading autobiographies of that time period. 1910, 1903, 1943. So it looks very interesting. So yeah, so I'm just hanging in there. You know, it's one thing. I watch a lot of BookTube, and sometimes I wonder, why I'm here. Why am I in BookTube? I'm here because I like sharing about books. I like all kinds of books, Christian books, secular books. I just like books. I love books. But I primarily like the activity of reading, of learning, studying. There's so much. And around here, you can find all kinds of interesting used books at thrift stores. And so yeah, I really have been enjoying reading Henry Miller's critical essays on literature. I've read a lot of Jonathan Lethem. I just finished reading The Fortress of Solitude, one of my favorite books. Motherless in Brooklyn. I just finished reading The Arrest last year. So I am always reading Jonathan Lethem. This is Brooklyn crime novel. Really enjoying reading Patrick White's biography. I read it last night. And I got his letters over there too, the letters of Patrick White. So I've been reading this. It doesn't, when he's older, this is when he was younger. So writing in my paper diary, just wandering my cell, watching Rome burn. So not much else. Like I said, I got books coming Thursday, this coming Thursday. I don't plan to go anywhere this week. So I'll sign off. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the questions. And yeah, I really don't know what else to say. I just keep praying for grace to keep running the race set before me. Yeah, you know, I'm always reading in the light of eternity, you know. We're in the last days. So pray for perseverance. So I hope you're all doing well. May the Lord bless. Until next time, bye.